Some shelters are not built from wood or stone. Some fall from the sky. That night, if he could not hold this door shut, the island would take everything from him. A deserted island, a broken spacecraft, and one man standing between shelter and oblivion. But to understand how he reached this impossible shelter, we must go back 7 days. Before the ship became a home, it was only a secret, buried beneath the jungle. On the first morning, he woke with sand in his mouth and memory broken into pieces. No map, no signal, and no answer to his voice. What remained was not enough to save him, only enough to remind him how far the old world had become. The island was beautiful enough to feel like a dream, and dangerous enough to end a life before sunset. In survival, the first need is not hope. It is water. One drop of water could buy one more hour of life.
But water was not waiting in the sea. It was hidden inside the forest. And the forest does not welcome the lost.
Every step had to be negotiated with nature. When he heard running water, he believed for the first time that he might survive the night. A temporary roof is not a home, but it keeps the body from surrendering before the dark. Fire is the thin line between a human being and despair. He relearned the oldest lesson of survival. Patience must outlast fear. On the first night, the island did not attack him. It simply let him hear the full weight of his loneliness. Some things do not keep the body alive, but they keep the soul from disappearing. Every morning, he sent a message to the sky.
But the sky stayed silent.
Food existed everywhere. Knowing what would not poison him was the real test. He did not eat with hunger. He ate with observation.
Every tool he made was a declaration. Not today.
On the fourth morning, the island made a sound that did not belong to it.
It was not an animal. It was not stone. It was metal.
He knew he might be walking into danger, but staying on the beach was only waiting.
The ground held a wound, too straight to be natural.
It was as if a piece of the sky had fallen here. It was not new, but it was not completely dead. On this island, survival was not defeating everything. It was knowing what not to touch. He waited, listened, and continued. Then the forest opened. Not an airplane, not a ship, a spacecraft. He did not know where it came from, but he understood one thing immediately. It could become shelter. Beneath the moss was technology far beyond anything he had ever known. But it was also
a giant corpse. And that corpse was still breathing.
He did not enter like an explorer. He entered like a man who needed to live. Inside was the silence of something that had once traveled between stars.
Every sound inside could be hope or warning.
The cockpit looked out into the jungle like the blind eye of a giant.
Metal walls, a roof that held, a door that could lock. On a deserted island, that was a castle.
In that moment, he stopped thinking like a victim.
He began to think like a man building a home. If nature gave him wood, he would use wood. If the sky gave him metal, he would use metal. On the first day, he reopened the way in.
Every piece of wreckage had to answer one question. Can you help me live?
He turned the cargo bay into a bedroom.
He turned dead cables into the bones of a shelter. The ship had once crossed clouds. Now it learned to catch rain.
Clean water was the first foundation of a home.
He did not bring fire inside the ship. He learned to respect both flame and metal.
That night, for the first time, he did not sleep under the open sky.
But the island did not surrender its territory easily. He learned that water did not belong only to man. He did not fight the island. He drew boundaries with it.
Every sunset, the sky belonged to other creatures.
Sometimes survival meant becoming quiet.
Real strength was not rushing out. It was knowing when to stay protected. On the second night inside the ship, he did not rely on luck. He prepared.
The sea was not an escape. Not yet. He was no longer just surviving the day. He was managing a home. What once served flight now served sleep. A small table can turn a shelter into a place where a man remembers who he is. The ship could no longer fly, but it still had small miracles left to give.
The first light inside the ship was not strong, but it was enough to push back part of the darkness.
Piece by piece, the dead ship became a home.
And a home needs more than walls. It needs a reason to return each night. He had not been rescued, but he was no longer completely lost. Deep in the jungle, a home unlike any other on Earth began to exist.
Then the island sent its greatest test.
There was no time left to fear, only time to prepare.
Every knot became a prayer.
The ship had survived falling from the sky. But could it survive the sea and the forest?
A home is not a place that never leaks. A home is the place you keep repairing.
Outside, the dark knocked on the door. One door, one man, one night longer than all the nights before.
He had lost the sea. He had lost the way home. But he would not lose this shelter. In the storm, the thing that fell from space became the fortress of one human life.
And then, for the first time in days, the island stepped back.
Dawn did not make life easy. It only proved he had passed through the night.
The home had survived the storm. He no longer saw it as wreckage. It had water, light, a place to sleep, a memory, a signal, a reason to continue. It had water, light, a place to sleep, a memory, a signal, a reason to continue. On a map, this place was still a deserted island. To him, it had a name now. Home.
He still wanted to be found. But he was no longer only waiting to be saved. Sometimes survival is not escaping the wilderness. Sometimes it is learning to turn what was abandoned into a reason to keep living.